encouraging around us. However, I am pleased to advise that this will be the last time we'll be meeting online, and that from next month we'll be back to the meeting in person with a public gallery. We will commence the meeting with the following reflection. I would ask those gathered to join us now for a few moments of silence as we reflect on our roles in this chamber. Please use the opportunity for reflection, prayer or thought to focus on your shared intention to work respectfully together for the well-being of our whole community. Thank you, councillors. I'd like to begin by acknowledging the traditional custodians of the lands of Cardinia Shire, the Bunurong and the Wurundjeri people, and pay my respects to the elders, both past and present. Councillors, do I have any apologies for this evening? I note there is none. Minutes of the previous meetings. Can I have a motion, please, to adopt the minutes of the previous meeting as listed? Moved by Councillor Davies and seconded by Councillor Cameron. All those in favour, please raise your hands. I declare that carried. Thank you, councillors. Declarations of interest. Do we have any declarations of interest to declare? And I noticed that Councillor Ross has his hand up. Councillor Ross, I'll let you announce your declaration of interest.
For item 6.2.3, I have a conflict of interest, so therefore I'll be excusing myself, and General Manager Doug Evans will be calling me to allow me back into the meeting. Thank you, Mayor.
Thank you, Councillor Ross. I note your declaration of interest. Ordinary business. The council conducts its meeting according to a consent agenda. Councillors have advised of the matters for consideration this evening that they wish to discuss or debate. The remaining items will be adopted without discussion. The items withdrawn for tonight's proceedings are as follows. Item 6.1.1, Planning Scheme Amendment C268-49 Garfield Road, Garfield, withdrawn by Councillor Moore. Councillor Moore to move the item.
Thank you, Mayor. I move that the council resolve to seek authorisation of the Minister of Planning under section 8A, bracketed 2 of the Planning and Environment Act 1987 to prepare amendment C268 to the Cardinia planning scheme. I will move that as a full recommendation, Mayor, because the rest is on the as per the officer's recommendation, because it's very lengthy and I'm going to speak on it after. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Moore. May I have a seconder, please, councillors? Councillor Ross, I note you for seconding, and I'll go back to Councillor Moore to speak on this item.
Thank you, Mayor, and thank you, Councillor Ross, for the second. I appreciate that. It's this is an exciting amendment, I believe, and I hopefully will get our the councillors will support this as I read. This doesn't need to be withdrawn tonight, but I just wanted to highlight how excited I'm about this in this Garfield area, and I think it's going to be a really great addition to the Garfield region. So, 49 Garfield Road, Garfield. This proposal is a planning scheme amendment C268, which I mentioned before, and concurrent planning permit application to subdivide the land. The planning scheme amendment seeks to rezone all the land that is inside the urban growth boundary from low density residential zone 2 and low density residential zone 3. The rezoning of the land from 4,000 square metres unsewered to a 2,000 square metres sewered lots is generally in accordance with the Garfield Township strategy, which identifies the land for low density residential purposes. This strategy, of course, was established in 2002 and needs to be reviewed in the future, I believe, because there is a lot of applications going into the Garfield region, and I believe we should be reviewing that that strategy being back from 2002. Lots have changed since then. The concurrent planning permit application seeks approval for a staged subdivision of the land into 37 low-density residential lots ranging from 2,000 square metres to over 8,700 square metres. So it's a lot of very different size blocks in this subdivision. As creation of reserves to be transferred to council and Melbourne Water, removal of native vegetation, removal of variations of existing easements which are there, and the creation of the restrictions of the planned subdivision for the building setbacks and maintenance of the bushfire defendable space on these private lots. So you can see this this application, this amendment is quite complicated and quite a complex application. So where you can see where it would be difficult to get through. The site is affected by several constraints all the same. Council officers from multiple departments and external officers, mainly from the CFA, of course, and the Melbourne Water, have collaborated to work through the constraints and have found very reasonable solutions. And I champion the proponent for this to go along with all these changes to get the best solution at the end of the day. Officers have negotiated multiple changes to the plans with the proponent, and the officers now believe the proposal have a good strategic justification for council to support letting it progress through the statutory process, which is a public process that includes input from our community, which I look forward to. Most of the native vegetation is proposed is to be retained within the conservation reserves, which we have combined in the area in the to a 1.1 hectare area. So this residential area, these low density blocks, I believe will give alternative lifestyles for the Garfield residents. Being a major railway station in Garfield, if you don't know that, it is, and so there's smaller unit type developments close to the railway station, which is how the zoning works, and this is right out on the outside boundary of the urban boundary of Garfield, on top of the hill. It actually looks over Garfield itself, so it's a really welcome development. I think will give alternatives for people to live in all different manners. But I think it's a really great system, and I just want to say that the planning scheme requires offset planting, of course, to compensate for the loss and condition of the planning permit will make sure that this happens, because offsetting of the vegetation removal and habitat planning, of course, for our southern brown bandicoot will be located along the eastern and western boundaries of the site. So the outlook of these blocks in this development are just fantastic, really. And the only issue we'll have is the entry into this block. At the moment, it's going to come in one direction, but they're looking at planning to come off Garfield Road, which would be a lot more suitable entry into this area. So I think when the proponents get together, the two developers that are working on this area, which is pretty busy, when they get together, I'm sure they'll get the best outcome for our community. But Mr. Mayor, I'll leave it there just in case the seconder would like to speak, or any other councillors, and I'll ask for their support on this important development in Garfield. Thank you, Mayor.
Thank you, Councillor Moore. I will now go to the seconder, Councillor Ross, to speak to this item.
Thank you, Mayor, and thank you, Councillor Moore, for leaving me lots to say about this. You're absolutely all over it. I think from my experience, if you've investigated and you believe it's a really good thing for the area, I think it would be. I must say I'm encouraged by hearing assurances about maintaining vegetation, still keeping the character of the area, and the fact that we'll have more people come to share living in our wonderful Shire. I think it will just be a wonderful thing. I think it's really good that it's organised in such a way that it isn't just spreading everywhere. It's in a totally organised manner. So I'll be supporting this amendment, and I will leave some space for other people to speak. Thank you, Mayor.
Mr. Mayor, you're muted.
I can't. He is muted. Yep.
My apologies. I thought I had unmuted, but just asking, is there any other councillors that would like to speak to this item? There being none, I'll go back to Councillor Moore to summarise. Thank you.
Thank you, Mayor. Thank you, Councillor Ross, for your positive comments. I really appreciate. I'm sure the people in Bunyip Ward also appreciate your kind thoughts. I'll just finalise by saying that should this proposal, with your help, councillors, be approved at the end of the statutory process, and it is a long process. This is not something simple. It's going through its process and its stages. The vegetation outcome, as mentioned by Councillor Ross, that will be achieved by provide significant and ongoing conservation biodiversity. Officers from our council's environmental, passive reserves and operations and strategic planning teams have worked together with the CFA, Melbourne Water, and of course the proponent as well to get this plans down to something that I think we can work with to ensure biodiversity is conserved and the development can occur at a safe distance from the bushfire risks. So I think all the boxes have been ticked. Just a matter of this going to the planning minister, and hopefully it comes back with a positive outcome. But thank you, Mayor. I thank you because I'm really enthusiastic about this, as you can probably tell. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Moore. We'll now put this to a vote. All those councillors in favour, please raise your hands. I declare that carried. Thank you, councillors. Second item for discussion is item 6.2.3, outcome review of the expenses claim. So I will bid farewell to Councillor Ross, who has already declared a conflict of interest for this item, and ask him to leave the meeting space. Thank you, Councillor Ross. I'll now continue. Councillor Radford has nominated to withdraw this item, so I will go to Councillor Radford to draw this item, please.
Thank you, Mayor. Yes, I've withdrawn this item 6.2.3, outcome of review of expense claims, and moved that we move the officer's recommendations, which is 1, note that the Local Government Inspectorate, following assessment of a number of expense claims submitted by Councillor Colin Ross, have concluded that there is insufficient evidence of a breach of the Local Government Act 1989 or Crimes Act 1958. And 2, consider the recommended amendments to the claim for travel expenses form contained within the councillor expenses policy as recommended by the Inspectorate at a future meeting. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Bradford, and I'll call for seconders, and I note that Councillor Ryan has already raised her hand to do so. So thank you, Councillor Ryan. I'll now go back to Councillor Bradford to speak to this item first.
Thank you, Mayor. Thank you, Councillor Ryan, for seconding this one. This has been an ongoing item that was first brought to Council on the 17th of August 2020 as a notice of motion where Council resolved to undertake an audit into the travel expenses lodged by Councillor Colin Ross. It is important to note that this resolution was made by the previous Council, not the one sitting here today, regarding travel expense claims made from May 2017 to July 2019. At the 14th of December 2020 Ordinary Council meeting, the first meeting of the newly elected Council, an independent audit by Justicia lawyers into Councillor Ross's expenses was presented. At this meeting, it was resolved by the new Council to refer the matter to the Local Government Inspectorate, the LGI. This action was recommended to Council to enable the most open and transparent governance process to be followed, as there were several matters not easily resolved or explained through the audit conducted by Justicia lawyers. And in my opinion, as a new Council, it was the most fair and reasonable action to take. At today's Council meeting, we are discussing the outcome of that review by the LGI. As noted in the recommendations I previously read out, the official position of the LGI is that there has been insufficient evidence of a breach of the Local Government Act 1989 or Crimes Act 1958. and that is what we need to act on. It is important to note that this review was done in accordance with the Local Government Act 1989 and not the current Local Government Act 2020, as the claims being reviewed were from May 2017 to July 2019, prior to the commencement of the Local Government Act 2020. While insufficient evidence of a breach of the Local Government Act was found, the Inspectorate did identify improvements that could be made to the Council's claim for travel expenses form contained within the Councillor's expenses policy. I won't be reading out the Councillor's expenses policy due to time constraints, but it can be easily found by anyone on the Cardinia Shire Council website. However, I will read out the recommendations the Inspectorate has made as they are aimed at minimising ambiguity with respect to councillors' expense claims. These recommendations were as follows. 1. A requirement that councillors clearly stipulate how the expense was incurred while performing their duties as a councillor. 2. A requirement that councillors include logbook entries or records of odometer readings at the start and end of the journey. 3. A requirement that councillors include the start and finish time of the journey. And 4. A requirement that councillors include the starting location of the journey. In my opinion, I think it is important that Council discuss and consider these recommendations as a priority. The Councillor Expenses Policy supports councillors to support their role as defined under the Local Government Act 2020 by ensuring that expenses reasonably incurred in the performance of their role are reimbursed and is intended to ensure that councillors are supported to perform their duties without disadvantage. The policy also provides guidance on entitlements, processes for reimbursement, and reporting requirements. However, the current travel expenses form item 3.1 within the Councillor Expenses Policy only requires a councillor to include in the claim lodge a photo of the destination and what actions resulted from this visit. There is currently no requirement to include odometer readings or logbook entries, or any of the other recommendations stated in the LGI report. In my opinion, currently item 3.1 within the Councillor Expenses Policy leaves the travel expenses open to misuse and misinterpretation. I strongly feel the recommendations from the Inspectorate will tighten up travel expense claims, making it clearer for council, ratepayers, residents and other interested parties to determine the nature, circumstances and appropriateness of councillors' expense claims. In other words, ensure that all our claims will meet the pub test and the court of public opinion. I will leave that for now and go to my seconder. Thanks, Mayor.
Thank you, Councillor Bradford. I'll now go to the seconder, Councillor Ryan, to speak to this item.
Thank you, Mayor. I'll reserve my right to speak until the others speak. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Ryan. Are there any other councillors that would like to speak on this item? Councillor Cameron.
Thank you, Mayor. Just leading on from where Councillor Radford was speaking, the Local Government Inspectorate did conduct a thorough assessment of the allegations, including reviewing Councillor Ross's expense claims, Justitia Lawyers' provisions of the Local Government Act and the Crimes Act, the report that Justitia Lawyers put out to Council. There was the Inspectorate concluded that there was insufficient evidence of a breach of either Act. The Inspector noted that whether a breach of the Councillor Code of Conduct occurred was not a matter for the Inspectorate but for Councillor. Justitia Lawyers for Council could find no breach of the Councillor Code of Conduct, a copy of which they were given at the beginning of their investigation. And even if they had, by their own admissions, were powerless to pursue the matter. The Local Government Inspectorate contacted Council on at least 3 occasions seeking more information and still found that Councillor Ross had not committed any breaches in relation to his travel expenses. They did not seek further information from Councillor Ross as they were believed what he had provided for them was adequate. At this stage, council had already spent well in excess of $70,000 and countless hours of council managers' time investigating this matter, all of which has been paid for by our ratepayers. The local government investigation was in fact only critical of council expense form, and as Councillor Tammy Radford pointed out, made 4 recommendations at minimising the ambiguity with respect to these claim forms. The question councillors should now be seeking to ask is, are these recommendations being taken on notice and are they being implemented? Thank you, Mayor.
Thank you, Councillor Cameron. Do I have any other councillors that wish to speak to this item? And I note that Councillor Davies has raised her hand. So, Councillor Davies.
Thank you, Mayor. As you're aware, I have spent a lot of time on this matter, many discussions with yourself and the Deputy Mayor, and I'm just speaking now to correct. Councillor Cameron has made some statements saying that there was no breaches. At no point has any documentation been released from the Local Government Act suggesting that Councillor Ross didn't make any breaches. The documentation that's actually been returned to Council actually says that they have insufficient evidence to charge under the Crimes Act or the LGA Act 1989, and further whilst it's been a very expensive endeavour, I believe that proper governance has been shown at all times, and I'd certainly be really disappointed if the wrong message was given to the public, because this is a very serious issue. It hasn't been a very comfortable issue for any of us, and I'm very glad that the Deputy Mayor has taken the leadership and read through the facts on this tonight. And I just really feel that I have to speak after Councillor Cameron, because there is a big difference in not having charges under the 2 acts and not having any breaches, because the breaches refer to the Council Code of Conduct, which due to different constraints couldn't actually be put in place. So I would really urge the any members of the public or any members of the media that want more information to please contact Council via our comms team or any of the councillors for official statements. All documents will be made public, and whilst I'm on this council, transparency and accountability is something that I'm very keen to see pursued. And in our initial discussions with council officers, a range of initiatives about tightening up any forms and any processes are already in place. And likewise, the letter from the LGI actually has requested that our CEO does provide advice within a month about any progress on this matter. So Councillor Cameron and any members of the public can rest assured that whilst charges haven't been laid, this has been taken seriously, and we have to look for the future. Councillors can also make sure that they adhere to the Code of Conduct and lead with accurate and timely and fair expense claims, and really take accountability for our own actions. And that's certainly something I strongly believe that we will do. So thanks, Mayor, for the opportunity to speak, and thank you, Councillor Radford, for your comprehensive and factual summary and advice given.
Thank you, Councillor Davies. Are there any other councillors that wish to speak to this item? And I note Councillor Owen has his hand.
Thank you, Mayor, and thank you to the other councillors who've already spoken on this item. Just the small point I wanted to make is that I do welcome the review of the claim for travel expenses form. Can I just remind councillors, probably approximately 2 years ago, the claim form and the claim process was audited by independent audit through the audit committee, and that got a tick of approval back then. So I welcome any further improvements, but and that independent audit did not have a problem with our current practices, but that went through an independent audit process. So I just wanted to highlight that. But yeah, I welcome further enhancements to this process to make it even better. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Owen. Do I have any other councillors that would like to speak to this item? I can see no other hands raised, so I will return to the seconder, Councillor Ryan, who has reserved her right to speak until the end. So, Councillor Ryan.
Thank you, Mayor, through you, and thank you, Councillor Radford, for bringing this to a head, and for councillors to speak on behalf of the information that came back. I'm not going to double up on what both all councillors have said. Just reading that the inspectorate concluded that there is insufficient evidence of a breach of the Local Government Act 1989 and Crimes Act 1958. And we need to be careful how we use the wording, because they've only stated breaching within this letter that was sent out. I think back in August, we always get our expenses audited anyway. I think there's been a lot of influence from outside and pressures that are coming in from all about as to, you know, let's find out what this was all about, what the issues were, and let's deal with them in the most professional manner that we can. And we have. We have gone through our own council solicitors, which found no breach. We also then sent it on to the Local Government Inspectorate, which, as I read out, there was no finding of any breaches. So that in itself, to me, is pretty much saying that we have done everything possible as a council that needs to be done. But the recommendations, I totally agree with the recommendations. We need to upgrade them a little bit. When I first came on board in council, there used to be itemised information in those claims, and for some reason those itemised information have now gone, and I think that's what the inspectorate is really indicating, that yes, a logbook is great because it also keeps us in track of what we're doing. Sometimes we can't always go down the destination of whatever road we take, depending on roadworks. So sometimes the travelling may be a little bit out of normally if you went down the freeway. There's also, you know, so starting point, writing it down in your logbook, and finishing point, writing it down in your logbook. Always important. And I think that's what the local government is, the inspectorate is coming back at, is that we need to be a little bit more clarifying where we travel to, what we do, whether, you know, even naming some of the people that go to the functions that we go to. It's again itemising and giving as much information as possible so that we are transparent. I think it's time that we start to put this to a rest. I think coming back from the local government inspectorate and what their findings is, and following through with some of their recommendations, I'll leave it at that. I think that's where we need to be now. Thank you, Mayor.
Thank you, Councillor Ryan. I'll now go back to Councillor Radford, the mover, to summarise.
Thank you, Mayor, and thank you to my fellow councillors. This has been challenging, and I feel that we have dealt with this item in a professional and fair manner. And as I have previously stated in my opening comments, the official position of the LGI after the investigation into the claims submitted by Councillor Colin Ross is that there is insufficient evidence of a breach of the Local Government Act 1989 or Crimes Act 1958, and that is what we need to act on. The Inspectorate has also made some recommendations for Council to consider with regards to the current claim for travel expenses form, which I support, as in my opinion, the form as it currently stands does not provide enough information to be clear, open and transparent. As elected public officials and leaders of our community, we are held to a higher standard of accountability, and it is vital that our policies are stringent so that there can be no misinterpretation nor open councillors up to scrutiny from council, residents, ratepayers and any other interested parties. So tonight I seek from my fellow councillors support of the officer's recommendations to note the outcome of the LGI's review into councillor expense claims and to discuss the LGI's amendments for the claim for travel expenses form at a future meeting, which I would like to see as a priority. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Radford. Councillors, we'll now put this to a vote. All those in favour, please raise your hand. Note that is carried. Thank you, councillors. Moving on, we're going to on to item 6.2.4, Casey Cardinia Foundation. I'll just ask our Manager of Governance, so Mr. Evans, to please contact Councillor Ross, invite him back into the room, and I'll just wait a moment until I see Councillor Ross has re-entered the room before we start the next item. I need a button here for elevator music so we can entertain ourselves. Dun, 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 dun.
This time, Mayor, you might have to be on mute. Not this time. Thank you.
So Councillor Ross will be joining us very soon, I imagine. Councillor Ross is back. Welcome. Thank you, Councillor Ross. Moving along, item 6.2.4, the Casey Cardinia Foundation, withdrawn by Councillor Kowalczyk. I'll now ask Councillor Kowalczyk to move this item.
Thank you, Mayor Springfield. I move that this council, 1, notes the report with information about the Casey Cardinia Foundation and the strategic review that has been undertaken. 2, notes the decision by City of Casey to withdraw from involvement with the Casey Cardinia Foundation. 3, supports the transition of the Casey Cardinia Foundation to a Cardinia Foundation and writes to the Chair encouraging the legal transition to take effect as soon as possible. 4, supports a medium to long-term growth agenda for the newly formed Cardinia Foundation and agrees in principle to provide financial support for the first 5 years of the Cardinia Foundation. And finally, 5, refers $120,000 per year for the next 5 years to the 2022-23 budget process for consideration. Thank you, Mayor.
Thank you, Councillor Kowalczyk. And I note that Councillor Owen has raised his hand to second that motion. I'll go back to Councillor Kowalczyk to speak to this item. Thank you.
Thank you, Mayor Springfield. Thank you, Councillor Owen, for your second. And to begin with, on speaking about this item, I do want to thank Councillor Brett Owen and our CEO, Ms Carol Jeffs, as our 2 board representatives for their fantastic service in those roles, as well as the beginning of the work on the sort of think tank that came up with some ideas on how to improve the foundation, which I'll speak to tonight. I also want to thank everyone who's contributed to the foundation to date, whether that be financially or otherwise. I support the recommendations I mentioned earlier and found within the report, principally that the foundation continue as a Cardinia-only operation with a medium to long-term growth strategy in its investment. I think it's important that we take these necessary steps for 3 reasons. The first one being, if you look at the aims of the foundation, one of the key ones, I think, is to build the capacity of not-for-profit community organisations and agencies that in turn provide enormous benefit to individuals, families and communities across the region. These community-run not-for-profits are where so many Cardinia locals volunteer, and their viability should continue to be assisted by council. Second important point we have here is to reduce the burden on ratepayers, and this is a really big one. Community grant money, which plays such an important role in our community, is funded directly from ratepayers' money. By renewing, recommitting and reinvigorating the foundation, we can combine with the philanthropists in the community and the private sector to continue to assist those community groups whilst also reducing the dependence on ratepayers' money. And finally, to continue the fantastic work that has already been achieved by the foundation over its 18 years of operation to date. With the completion of this strategic review and a clear direction on the best way forward, it would be short-sighted to wrap up the foundation, given what it's already done and what it could potentially achieve in the future. Thank you, Mayor.
Thank you, Councillor Kowalczyk. I'll go to the seconder, Councillor Owen, to speak.
Thank you, Mayor, and thank you, Councillor Kowalczyk. Well spoken introducing this item. I just want to say some brief comments. I've been on a director of the foundation for about 10 years through its transition from Cardinia to Casey Cardinia, and I'm really proud that our CEO, it was her idea about two years ago, thereabouts, probably at the time of COVID, that she initiated this review at the time with the City of Casey. So it was great to really, just get a snapshot of where the foundation was going and, renew it. So I commend the CEO for undertaking or committing to this review. We acknowledge that Casey no longer wants to be part of the foundation. We acknowledge that. We thank them for their involvement through the years, but I'm really pleased of what's in the recommendation that Councillor Kowalczyk has stated. I do hope that all councillors will support this direction, and all councillors will support this direction, in the forthcoming 5-year budgets, budget cycles. So for the coming 5 years, it really needs that injection of funds so we can really get it going, generate some real real good amounts of money, delivering it back to our community. I want to thank the current directors and the directors in the past, but particularly the work of the chairman, Paul Thomas. He's been working with the CEO throughout our CEO regarding this review. So I look forward to, if this motion is passed, that Cardinia moves on to bigger and better things as the foundation. So I do hope all councillors support this. This is the right direction. It does need a refresh. It needs to reset and have bigger bang for the community's buck. So I really look forward to this progressing. Thanks, Mayor.
Thank you, Councillor Owen. I'll go to Councillor Ross for a comment.
Thank you, Mayor. With this happening with Casey Cardinia and Casey coming out, I think it's sad in a way that they're not continuing as a partner. This is an example of where you lose the democratic representation of the community on council, and you don't have councillors, because often the councillors are the people closest to the community, who are the ones who see where the money goes to, the ones who sit on the directorship, the ones who have the passion for this sort of thing. And this is a sad state of affair when our neighbour doesn't have any councillors, and hopefully in future they will get some democratic representation back there. The passion will come back to their council, and we'll see them get involved a bit more in things with Cardinia Shire. From my experience, during my time as mayor, I know that I was a little bit more involved, and I did see a lot of passion coming from the Casey side. From what I understand, that once the councillors went, it lost some steam. But I must say, I must commend the Cardinia Shire Council directors and the people in the community who Councillor Owen mentioned, for their passion and their support with the Cardinia Foundation. They've done a wonderful job over a long period of time. They run excellent events, and they do their absolute maximum for the community to raise some money to give out to different groups. So anyway, I look forward to the rebooting of this organisation. I know that Cardinia does an amazingly excellent job in this area. We're like the little, as Councillor Moore would say, we're like the little train that can. Often other people look at the budget that we have compared to other budgets, and they look to the excellent work that we do in areas, and we really do lead the way on very small budgets. So I look forward to seeing some excellent work in this area, and I just want to thank again those people who have been fighting as hard as they can to keep it going, and you haven't been forgotten, and we will continue to try and support you. Thank you, Mayor.
Thank you, Councillor Ross. Would any other councillors like to speak to this item? I see no other hands, so I'll go back to the mover, Councillor Kowalczyk, to speak.
Thank you, Mayor Springfield. Also, thank you to Councillors Owen and Councillor Ross for your comments on tonight's item. So obviously councillors in the community have heard tonight just now that there's a number of reasons that we as an organisation should continue with the foundation despite the loss of Casey Council through their withdrawal. The foundation does do a lot of great work in the community, which we've heard, but the strategic review has identified that it's stuck in a bit of a rut, and with some changes, it can do a lot more. With appropriate investment and patience, the potential return on investment is 5.8, which means that for every dollar that council invests, $5.80 can go back into Cardinia's community groups. And that's a fantastic ratio there. In turn, this will reduce the burden on ratepayers over a period of time and aims to ensure the sustainability of grant funding that Cardinia Shire Council provides to the community. I hope my fellow councillors will support these recommendations. Thank you, Mayor.
Thank you, Councillor Kowalczyk. Councillors, we'll now put this to a vote. All those in favour, please raise your hands. I declare that is carried. Thank you. Next item on the agenda is item 6.2.5, response to petition requesting the closure of Pine Hill Drive at the end of Ryan Road in Pakenham. Withdrawn by Councillor Moore. Councillor Moore to move.
Thank you, Mayor Springfield. I move that Council note the requests through the submissions of a petition by residents of Pine Hill Drive, Pakenham, for the permanent closure of Pine Hill Drive at the end of Ryan Road, Pakenham, the permanent closure of 2 driveways for the compulsory acquired properties at number 38A and 44 Pine Hill Drive, the total redevelopment of Ryan Road, including the closure of Pine Hill Drive, to be funded by the level crossing removal projects and the Victorian Government. Also, investigate and work in conjunction with the residents of Pine Hill Drive and the LXRP to ensure residents of Pine Hill Drive are not adversely affected through the level crossing removal project, which includes the construction of the new Pakenham East railway station. Thank you, Mayor.
Thank you, Councillor Moore. Can I have a seconder, please? Councillor Ryan. I'll go back to Councillor Moore to speak to this item first. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Ryan, for the second. I appreciate it. Firstly, I'd like to thank the residents and the signatories of this petition we're speaking about tonight. I sincerely, and I mean sincerely, totally sympathise with this complex situation that our local community has been put under. And I want to particularly thank the drivers of this petition, Adrian and Elizabeth Wood, who have driven this petition for our local community. Council officers have investigated and noted that the Pine Hill Drive is currently located with the LXRP declared project area for the Victorian Government's project. The full scope of the works that is to be delivered and what is to be included in the LXRP project remains unknown, which Council continues to work with the LXRP as the scope is developed. So we need an informed decision here on the right development. Until this occurs, it is not clear what implications this may have for the Pine Hills Drive people, and any proposal to prematurely close the road could have further impacts on the property owners without the knowledge of the whole complete project, which we don't know. Considering this, it is proposed that Council undertakes a traffic and parking assessment of the Pine Hill Drive in the immediate future. And I must tell you right now that we have engaged a traffic consultant to do just that. So we have engaged already. So we're jumping the gun to do this ourselves, to follow further assessments after development is complete and the new station is opened, to determine if the traffic and demand of the parking has increased and what impact there has been to residents, which we don't know. And it's very, very difficult. So therefore, to have a traffic consultant already engaged in this process is a push forward, I believe. Residents of the Pine Hill Drive will be advised of these assessments from the traffic consultant when they come to pass, which will also guide any subsequent further works and future works is deemed necessary. The LXRP will advise of the residents' petition and ask to consider residents' concerns in their design and management of the construction works. So we're keeping in contact with the LXRP project managers, and through this traffic consultant, I'm sure we're going to get some form of result to know which direction we need to travel and support our local community. Council has advocated and will continue to advocate to the LXRP for upgrades of the Ryan Road, the provision of car parking where needed, and to minimise impacts of the project to our local residents. Thank you, Mayor. I'll leave it there for the moment, and other councillors may want to speak, and even the seconder if may be. Thank you, Mayor Springfield.
Thank you, Councillor Moore. I will go to the seconder, Councillor Ryan, to speak to this item.
Thank you, Mayor, and thank you, Councillor Moore, for bringing this this item up. I think it's really important to our local residents. Speaking with some of the residents and how it's going to affect them, I think having a traffic consultant report assessment will be a great action plan, and I think we're not the ones that have to live down there. We've got residents that will be living there permanently, and some may move because of the issues that are going on there. How these things affect residents, we can't answer that because we're not in that position, but we're in a position to speak on their behalf and speak about their concerns. And I think that Councillor Moore, you've covered most of what I was going to say, so I don't think I need to double up on that, but I will be in support of you on this item. So I'll leave it at that. Thank you, Mayor.
Thank you, Councillor Ryan. The only other councillors who would like to speak to this item? Councillor Kowalczyk.
Thank you, Mayor Springfield. Thanks, Councillor Moore and Councillor Ryan, for your comments regarding this one. I just wanted to speak tonight just to acknowledge publicly, and I think we all know this already, that the limited power council have here with regard to the entirety of these LXRP projects. And I don't mean to say that as a cop-out, I just mean to say that as a fact. And it's a painful realisation that as empathetic as council is to the position of many of these landholders, we aren't necessarily in a position to grant wishes like a genie would. So it's really disappointing, and yeah, that doesn't mean we give up. I want to stress that too, but I also don't want to give false hope. I do think that as a result of what these residents have gone through, we owe it to do as much as reasonably possible to meet their needs and be responsive to their requests. And I do think the council officers have done a good job in that regard. So I want to thank them for that. I did enjoy reading in the report that recommendations as a result of the assessments undertaken will be discussed in consultation with the residents of Pine Hill Drive. So I think that's a really, really good thing. And Councillor Moore touched on this earlier too, is that we are going to be in pretty frequent contact with the residents regarding the outcomes of all these assessments before and after the train station goes up. So I'll leave it there, but I just wanted to mention that and certainly give my sympathy to the residents there at Pine Hill Drive and encourage them to continue to engage with council, because as I sort of said, as we do have limited power, it doesn't mean we give up and we keep advocating on their behalf. Thank you, Mayor.
Thank you, Councillor Kowalczyk. Would any other councillors like to speak to this item? There being none, before I go back to the mover, I might just say a couple of quick comments myself. And I reiterate the sentiments of my fellow councillors here. As Councillor Kowalczyk said, we can't really control any decisions that are made here by LXRP, but what we can do is advocate for the best outcomes for the residents that are affected by this. And to date, we've been in support of these announced amendments. The building of the station, the building of the new suburb of Pakenham East. There's a lot of positives that are around this, but amongst all these positives, for myself, importantly, we can't forget that the residents that live close by and what they've presented to us in the petition is that they are adversely affected and they're concerned about how this is going to look for their future. So I think it's really important that we've considered this and we brought it before council, and that we will work together as a council to secure the best outcome for these residents that are affected by this. And even though many other residents across the Shire may see great benefit in this, it's not going to benefit everyone. So I think the best outcome we can try to achieve is to fight for little guys to make sure that their amenity is least affected as possible. And I think we're undertaking to do that from all conversations I'm hearing here. So thank you, councillors, and for the consideration of this petition. I think it's really well noted, and the plight of these residents, I want them to know that it is heard at these council chambers also. Thank you, councillors. I'll now return to Councillor Moore to summarise on this item. Thank you.
Thank you, Mayor Springfield, for your kind words. And thank you, Councillor Ryan, for the second and your words, and Councillor Kowalczyk for your wisdom. I do note, of course, the when we have projects, as Councillor Kowalczyk mentioned, when they are projects of state significance, we become a bit powerless in some of the decisions that are made and put before us, even if when our community's been impacted like this situation. So we have to do everything we possibly can to support that community where possible. And I really want to thank our staff who are right behind us. We've got a big staff group looking into this. I've got Tracy Parker and Narelle Bolide who go to these LXRP meetings and report back to me particularly, and to the rest of the councillors here, to keep them in contact and awareness of what's happening around us. And Peter Benezik and David Feist has been really drivers from our council to get the best result we can possibly get under the circumstances. And I want to thank them. And I want to thank David Feist for getting this traffic consultant getting behind us. So we're getting in front of the ball here. As I'd say, trying to get this thing back on the rails if we can. But council will continue. We will continue to advocate to the LXRPs through our staff to upgrade Ryan Road. I think is very important, and the provision of car parking is going to be critical when this happens. And to minimise impacts of the projects to our local community and residents, as we've spoken. Unfortunately, we can't make any major decisions at the moment because we don't know the overall project plan of what it's going to look like. And it may have not as much impact or more impact, so we have to adjust that as we go. So sometimes jumping the gun can be maybe the wrong decision, but we're not giving up on this. We've got the right people in place to do it, and with your help, councillors, we will support these residents as best we can. So council undertake the parking and the traffic, as we said before, through this consultant, on Pine Hill Drive, right now, followed by a future assessment after the train station has been developed is complete. That might have to happen before we make major decisions on what happens with the traffic and the road closures. I know that unfortunately, the residents, they want to close it right away and have that happening right away, but I don't think that might be the right decision to make under the circumstances where we don't know the overall project end result. So I ask my fellow councillors to support the people on the petitions and our local residents in this way. Thank you, Mayor.
Thank you, Councillor Moore. And councillors, we'll now put this to a vote. All those in favour, please raise your hand. I declare the item carried. Thank you, councillors. Moving along, next item is 6.2.6 Beaconsfield Reservoir. Withdrawn by Councillor Owen. Councillor Owen to move this item. Thank you.
Thanks, Mayor. I move the following. That Council 1, note the officer's report. 2, highly commends the work that the Cardinia Environment Coalition has undertaken in managing the reserve and continue to advocate for ongoing recurrent funding for their park management activities. 3, advocate for the state government to assign the park manager role to a state government agency. 4, advocate for the enhancement for recreational assets that creates opportunity for the community to experience a high value natural environment. 5, continue to advocate to DAWIP to fund the development of a long-term strategic plan for the reserve. 6, acknowledge the community correspondence received by Council supporting the preservation of the dam in its current state. And 7, request that Melbourne Water continue to engage with the community and explain the rationale for selecting the partial decommissioning option. I move so.
Thank you, Councillor Owen. Can I have a seconder, please? Councillor Radford. Thank you. I'll go back to Councillor Owen to speak to this item.
Yeah, thank you. And I do note, Mayor, I've only got 5 minutes, so I'm very mindful of that. I'm just reading from the executive summary. The Beaconsfield Reservoir is under the ownership and responsibility of the Victorian Government, but one that is of great interest to our community, particularly the local community of this area. The purpose of this report is to provide a status update of the proposed Beaconsfield Reservoir project and detail what progress has occurred to enact the council resolutions from the council meeting from May last year. Further, the report also provides council with an opportunity to consider correspondence received from community members regarding their preferred outcomes and cultural values that are attached to the existing Melbourne Water assets and reservoir conditions. The report considers Melbourne Water's proposal to undertake works at the Department of Environment, Land, Water and Planning managed Beaconsfield Nature Conservation Reserve within the Beaconsfield Reservoir. Melbourne Water is responsible for the infrastructure that supports the reservoir and proposes to decommission the existing reservoir dam wall. Melbourne Water's rationale for action is driven by safety concerns as the war allegedly fails to comply with the Australian National Committee on Large Dams guidelines. Coupled with the proposed dam wall reduction, it is proposed installation of recreational assets and associated landscaping. The new recreation assets necessitates the assignment of a park manager to fund maintenance and ongoing asset care and renewal. Melbourne Water have advised that if a park manager is not assigned, that the landscaping work will not form part of the scope for the proposed works. The current park manager for the reserve is the Cardinia Environment Coalition, CEC. They have a direct service provision arrangement with DAWIP. The CEC are considered an excellent service provider and have an intimate knowledge of the reserve and are skilled in the provision of environmental services. The Cardinia Environment Coalition is funded through a grants mechanism for their important environmental services. Any changes to the recreation asset base and visitation volumes would need to necessitate a review of the funding provision provided by DAWIP. It is evident that there is wide recognition of the environment value of the reserve. There also appears to be broad support for increased public access to the Beaconsfield Nature Conservation Reserve and provide recreational assets such as a perimeter walking circuit, barbecues and picnic facilities. Melbourne Water has indicated their preferred option, and that's outlined in the report. Council officers acknowledge and appreciate that Melbourne Water selected option has raised concerns for some members of our community. The report includes the correspondence received and detailed the concerns raised. So I know I haven't got long to go, but the recommendations are clear. Highly commends the work of Cardinia Environment Coalition has undertaken in managing the reserve and continue to advocate for ongoing recurrent funding. That needs to happen. They need ongoing recurrent funding, the CEC, for their activities at this reserve. Advocate for the state government to assign the park manager role to a state government agency. It is a Victorian government asset. They need to manage this asset. There's strong community will that this needs to be more accessible to the public. They need to commit to this. Also, advocate for the enhancement for recreational assets. That creates opportunity for the community to experience a high value natural environment. This is a must. As part of these proposed works, we need to see improved facilities to allow that improved access to residents to visit this great reserve. So I continue to advocate to DELWP to fund the development of a long-term strategic plan for the reserve. That was in our initial resolution back in May last year. The report outlines that the department does not want to go down this track. We think as a council this is really important for the long-term future of this reserve, provide that sort of direction. We do acknowledge the community correspondence received by council supporting the preservation of the dam in its current state. I do note that large petition. I do note recent meetings in office last year and also this year as well. There's been tours of the reservoir itself. I acknowledge the many emails, and also I do note there's many different views. You look at the officer and District Community Association, they've got one view. The Beaconsfield Progress Association has a different view, and also the Upper Beaconsfield Association has a different view as well, and they've been expressed over the time. But it is really important that Melbourne Water engages with the community. There's been really minimal engagement with our community. There has been some neighbour sort of interactions, but as a whole, it has been inadequate. I did attend initial meetings in April 2019, where there were 6 in Beaconsfield and Upper Beak, but they weren't really well attended, to be honest. And when Melbourne Water came to council this year and briefed councillors, I highlighted the need that they must communicate with the wider, and increase that communication with residents. Explain why have they chosen this that one option, why. What are they planning to do, and what would be the consequences if other options were implemented? That needs to be elevated. And I understand that Melbourne Water has penciled in some meetings in the coming months, so that really needs to occur. But I will go to, obviously, the seconder and other speakers to talk to this item. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Owen. I'll go to the seconder, Councillor Radford, to speak to this item.
Thank you, Mayor, and thank you, Councillor Owen, for withdrawing this item. It is a very, very detailed and lengthy report. And firstly, I would like to acknowledge the outstanding work done by our General Manager of Infrastructure and Environment, Mr. Peter Benezik, in bringing us this detailed report. This report is exceptional, and Mr. Benezik has gone to great lengths to include all available information for our consideration. So thank you, Peter. Your commitment to this report and regular communication with councillors and other stakeholders has been very much appreciated. Due to the length of this detailed report, I'm only going to highlight a few things from it tonight, but you can find the full report on the Cardinia Shire website. And Councillor Owen has highlighted many items from this report also. There are several communications within this report and attached, including a sample letter received from members of the Officer District and Community Association and residents, of which there were approximately 60 letters received. Since this report was completed, though, there has been some additional correspondence received from residents Harry Jensen, Lauren Cogg and the CEC, the Cardinia Environment and Coalition. So can I please ask Mayor if we can request to have these letters attached to this report, as I feel it's important to have everyone's point of view for consideration.
Thank you, Councillor Radford. I believe we can do that as such, so thank you.
Thank you, Mayor. So as this report will be updated to include these latest forms of communication. And I would like to take this opportunity to thank everyone who has forwarded a letter to Council. There are many differing opinions, as Councillor Owen highlighted, and it's important for Council to hear that. So thank you. As I said, Councillor Owen has highlighted a number of things, so I just wanted to highlight that the main reason the Melbourne Water has investigated the Beaconsfield Reservoir dam wall is due to the age and safety concerns. Risk assessments dating back to 2010 have identified the Beaconsfield Reservoir dam wall as an area of concern that does not meet current standards, and a plan needs to be put in place to address this. Melbourne Water has provided council officers with a safety assessment report, and this report can be accessed by the community via the link provided in this agenda item. It is important to highlight that Council is not equipped with specialist technical skills in relation to significant hydrological infrastructure, and Council officers are reliant on the technical expertise of the Melbourne Water asset managers to assess the appropriate solution, consequences and risk appetite for their assets. I would also like to finally highlight and commend the advocacy that Council has done and has committed to, and which is Council's primary role to play here. And Council will continue to advocate to Melbourne Water to communicate with the community. As I said at the beginning, this is a lengthy and very detailed report, and I encourage all interested residents to jump onto the Cardinia Shire website and have a read of the full report. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Bradford. Would any other councillors like to speak to this item? Councillor Kowalczyk.
Thank you, Mayor Springfield. Thank you, Councillors Owen and Radford, for your summary of this item. And as it was pretty detailed, I will keep it brief. I just wanted to present the information that was given to us, as it was given to us, so the community can understand, I guess, how councillors have probably reached the conclusions that they've reached. The information that we get is that DELP manages the BNCR. Within the reserve is a reservoir. Melbourne Water is responsible for the infrastructure that supports the reservoir. And essentially that is more or less the crux of the argument. Melbourne Water is responsible for the infrastructure. Councillor Owen mentioned this before. We had a recent meeting in a briefing between the councillors seated before you tonight and Melbourne Water. And as he did ask the question around the need for an improvement in communication, and I must say they were receptive to that. So we'll await to see what comes of that. But I will say that my initial perspective is they were receptive to that and they were in agreement that they could do better. So I do look forward to that. I asked the representatives from Melbourne Water during that meeting repeated and specific questions around the total funding of the project, of the various options that were presented, the various options that they had around them. And my assessment is, and the information that was given to me is that whilst, you know, obviously always money comes into the conversation, it wasn't the determinant factor and it was around the safety, because I do think an organisation like Melbourne Water could pretty easily foot the bill between the difference between the various different options, but they've picked the safest option here. And I know that not everyone in the community agrees with that, but as Councillor Radford said, they have the scientific expertise, they have the systems in place to understand what the safest option is, and we have to back them on that. I think it's already been covered around all the acknowledgements and thank yous to the CEC, all the friends groups and all the correspondence that all the councillors have received. And I do think it's really great that, you know, in a democracy, everyone gets involved and everyone offers their opinion. I think that's fantastic and I welcome that. And I read all the emails that I got, so thank you to everyone who took the time. And Peter Benezik, he has already been mentioned. He's a superstar and I want to thank him for his work in this space and for helping councillors understand the various roles that each of the stakeholders play and the various options available to this council. I support the officer's recommendations in full. Thank you, Mayor.
Thank you, Councillor Kowalczyk. Would any other councillors like to speak to this item? There being none, I will go back to Councillor Owen to summarise this item. Thank you.
Thanks, Mayor. Thank you, Councillor Radford and Kowalczyk, for your comments. I also want to thank Peter Benezik. I ran out of time in my 5 minutes, so I run short. But thank you, Peter, General Manager, for this report. I know you've worked on it massively, so thank you so much. But in conclusion, Council is supportive of works that protects the community from unnecessary risk. It is acknowledged there are several options that can be achieved. That can achieve the desired outcome. Council is reliant on the technical expertise of Melbourne Water asset managers to assess the appropriate solution, consequences and risk appetite for their assets. Council also supports the notion of ongoing consultation and engagement by Melbourne Water with the community, and I do acknowledge your comments, Councillor Kowalczyk, there. To ensure community concern are the community concern is fully understood and addressed. There are clearly divergent and passionate views regarding the vision should be for the BNCR, which only strengthens Council's perspective for the need for the development of a long-term strategic plan by DELWP. There is also appears to be strong support for the enhanced recreational facilities to be delivered to enable greater access to the reserve and provide connection to council's trails. Given the prominence of the BNCR as a potential regional destination, council believes that a state government agency should assume the responsibility for the recreational assets and continue the arrangement with the CEC to provide environmental services. It is pristine bush. It is got so much value in that reserve environmentally, so it needs that. The BNCR is one of immense public value and should be afforded the appropriate status by DALWIP to ensure that the community can have access to its beauty. And it is no different to other parks like Lysterfield Lake, which is managed by state authorities. So we've got a great opportunity. In the recommendations of this resolution, we're continuing to advocate. We are continuing to represent the community in regarding their concerns and wants, and the resolution does detail that. So we also have a state election coming up, and I know people are so passionate about this issue. Council is doing its bit in advocating, obviously outlined in the resolution, but I think people power needs to really stand up at this critical time of this year to really highlight this issue. So I move so. Thank you, Mayor, and I hope other councillors support same. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Owen. Councillors, we'll now put this item to a vote. All councillors in favour, please raise your hands. I declare the item carried. Thank you, councillors. Moving along to item 6.3.2, open air fires, local law number 20, withdrawn by Councillor Owen. Councillor Owen, I understand that you have a motion that differs to the officer's recommendation. Please, if you would like to move that item.
Thank you, Mayor. I move that this matter be deferred for further consideration at the March council meeting.
Thank you. Can I have a seconder for that, please? Councillor Moore, thank you. I'll go back to Councillor Owen if you'd like to speak to this item.
Yeah, thank you, Mayor. Thank you, Councillor Moore. I think the report, there needs to be some amendments to the report before it is considered by council. So I'm asking for it to be deferred for those amendments to be made. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Owen. Councillor Moore, would you like to add any comments to this item?
Just small, Mayor Springfield. Just yes, this is an important document, very important document to our community, Cardinia wide. So it needs to be correct. If there's a little bit of inconsistency or maybe some discrepancies in the report, I think they should be finalised and be correct when delivered to our community. So I think deferring it. Thank you, Councillor Owen, for deferring it. I think is the right decision to make tonight, and that's why I seconded it. Thank you, Mayor.
Thank you, Councillor Moore, and I support your sentiments. This does need to be. We need to get this right. We need to get this as best as it possibly can be to meet the community needs. So I thank you and appreciate that. Councillors, would anyone else like to just comment on this item before I go back to the mover? There being none, I'll go back to Councillor Owen just to summarise your new position. Thank you.
Thank you, Mayor, and thank you, Councillor Moore. And you are absolutely right, Councillor Moore. It is such an important issue, and I know some people may be disappointed that it's not being resolved tonight. But over the weekend, I observed something in the report that wasn't quite correct. So I'm asking officers to amend that report and bring it back to us next month. So thank you, councillors.
Thank you, Councillor Owen. Councillors, I now ask councillors to vote on the alternative motion put forward by Councillor Owen. All those in favour of deferring, please raise your hand. I declare that carried. Thank you, councillors. Moving along to item 6.5.1, Environment Council Plan Initiatives Quarterly Report, withdrawn by Councillor Kowalczyk. Councillor Kowalczyk to withdraw.
Thank you, Mayor Springfield. I move that council note the report.
Thank you, Councillor Kowalczyk. Can I have a seconder, please, councillors? Councillor Moore, Thank you for seconding that motion. I'll go back to Councillor Kowaczyk to speak to this item. Thank you.
Thank you, Mayor Springfield, and thank you, Councillor Moore. Don't everyone rush at once to second this. No, I just wanted to highlight the Environment Council Plan Initiatives Quarterly Report to provide an update on actions pertaining to Focus Area 3 of the Council Plan, Thriving Environments and its associated initiatives. This is guided and categorised according to our Sustainable Environment Policy 2018 to 2028. I want to begin on the climate change front, if I can. Most of the community will know that in September of 2019, a climate emergency was declared across Cardinia Shire Council. Our work in this space continues, and we have a number of strategies either in draft form or out for public consultation regarding climate change adaptability and resilience. The public consultation for our climate change adaptation strategy closes on the 16th of March, and I'd encourage any interested residents to jump on the website and contribute to the community-facing actions that are contained within that strategy. Thank you to those community members who have reached out to me regarding that and who have shown a great interest in what Council is doing and how we can do more. In the waste and resource recovery area, which is obviously a hot topic, there's been lots happening since our last ordinary meeting in December. Regarding the bookable hard rubbish pickup service and the impact of COVID, there have been challenges, and that's been noted, with contractors being available to carry out the work. Residents are asked that if their hard waste pile is missed in their designated week, to please be patient and leave it out. Also, if you notice any rubbish that has been left out for a number of weeks, please email customer service and report it. They'll be able to differentiate between whether or not that particular pile has been booked in or not, and therefore service that on a needs basis. We're going to be asking for some public feedback in this space in the coming months, so please be ready for that. Also want to mention this is the first quarterly report that mentions advanced waste processing and the special purpose vehicle of which Cardinia Shire is a part of. We've partnered with 14 other councils to seek proposals from the industry on how we manage our waste. Historically, landfills were the only option available for managing residual waste streams that could not be recycled. Other proven alternatives to landfill, which are widely used internationally, are being realised as an accepted alternative in Australia. These technologies are collectively known as advanced waste processing. The special purpose vehicle will help councils deliver an advanced waste processing facility that will process household rubbish instead of burying it in landfill, and we'll have further updates on that in the coming months. And finally, the last area I wanted to touch on is biodiversity. The environmental education programs run at Deep Creek Reserve by EcoLink are fully booked, which is so fantastic to see our schools engaging in learning about and protecting biodiversity. EcoLink have partnered with Prime Sci from Swinburne University to expand program offerings at Deep Creek Reserve. It's a great result to see such a take-up of the classes and to see an award-winning facility being used as intended and just about at capacity. I'll just leave it at that, and I might go to Councillor Moore for anything else that he'd like to mention. Thank you, Mayor. Thanks, Councillor Moore.
Thank you, Councillor Kowaczyk, and I'll go to the second, Councillor Moore, to speak to this item next.
Thank you, Mayor. And I believe that Councillor Kowaczyk has just about covered the whole item here. I did second this. I didn't want to leave my fellow councillor hanging. So I really want to support Councillor Kowaczyk because I know he's got a special passion for this particular subject. But I'll reserve my right to speak, Mayor Springfield, and I'll let you take the meeting back. Thanks.
Thank you, Councillor Moore. Would any other councillors like to speak to this item? Councillor Owen.
Yeah, thank you, Mayor. Thank you, Councillor Kowaczyk, for this. Just wanted to talk about the Emerald Museum. The report provides an update of the Emerald Museum about works undertaken during lockdown and welcoming visitors back. Now restrictions are easing. So, and the update is while the museum was closed for a period of time, lots of work has been undertaken during that lockdown and difficult year that we had, which including redesign of the website, including listing names of families that have hard copy files available to view, information about the park and collections held at the museum. Collaborating with a graphic designer to create a new pamphlet based on the museum's collection, and also redesign of the old logo, which will be released very soon. An update on the collection policy, and also when the museum opened in November last year, the committee are working on some fun ways to re-engage the community and visitors with the museum, which includes Emerald Museum celebrated a museum selfie day on Wednesday the 19th of January, and also the collection accessibility project is underway. So this project supports 4 museum art students, interns, to work closely with the museum database eHive, cleaning up the object records and updating locations to improve public accessibility, visibility, as well as collection digitisation. So well done to the Emerald Museum, and it's great to see that they're back operating again. So thank you, Mayor. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Owen, and they are a great service to the community, the Emerald Museum up here. Yeah, do a lot of great work for volunteers there. Thank you. Councillors, would anyone else like to speak to this item? I see no other hands, so I will go back to Councillor Kowalczyk to summarise. Thank you.
Thank you, Mayor Springfield. Thank you, Councillor Moore, and also thank you, Councillor Owen, for your contribution. There's a whole host of information contained within this report, and I've only touched on some of it. And if anyone watching tonight wants further information regarding what Council's doing in the environment space and all the subsequent sort of strategies and policies that come under that, please get in touch with us, with Council or any of your local councillors. We need passion in this space. We need enthusiasm. So we really want to encourage that and really be reciprocal for that effort. So Council continues its work on a broad range of projects, services and actions, delivering environmental benefits throughout the organisation and the community. I encourage the community to continue to engage with Council via the public consultation offered whenever possible, as it's a fantastic way to ensure your voice is heard. Thank you, Mayor.
Thank you, Councillor Kowalczyk. And councillors, we will now put this to a vote. All those in favour, please raise your hand. I declare that carried. Thank you. Moving along, the next item on the agenda is 6.5.5, Major Projects Report, withdrawn by Councillor Radford. Councillor Radford to move. Thank you.
Thank you, Mayor. I move the officer's recommendation that the council note this report.
Thank you, Councillor Radford. Can I have a seconder, please? Councillor Ross. Thank you. I'll now go back to the mover, Councillor Radford, to speak to this item first. Thank you.
Thank you, Mayor. Thank you, Councillor Ross, for seconding. As it had been a couple of months since our last meeting, I wanted to withdraw this item for discussion to give councillors an opportunity to highlight the great work that council has done and is continuing to do. So a couple of exciting items to highlight from this major projects report for Officer Ward are the construction of LL and Armitage roads from dirt to sealed roads has begun and is estimated to be completed in approximately 14 weeks. This included the temporary sealing of Browns Road, which has been completed using the new recycled glass crushed rock pavement material product. I use these roads daily and travelling on Browns Road feels way more comfortable, not as bumpy, and has definitely improved safety. It is exciting also to see that as part of the Princess Highway intersection upgrades, Bayview Road and Tivendale Road Station Street are due to have work start in June 2022. These works will increase the capacity of Tivendale Road Station Street intersection, and Bayview Road will be upgraded to signalised intersection. The Princess Highway South Side shared path and bridges has been moving along nicely and is estimated to be completed in March 2022. And finally, before moving on to the seconder, the Ricks Road Integrated Children's Centre was completed at the end of 2021, and I was very lucky to have a tour of this new facility in January this year before the kinder year started. This facility is a beautiful modern design with lots of consideration given to the needs of the kiddies who will be attending, and I would like to take this opportunity to thank everyone involved with the development of this site. Feedback from the families has been very positive, with children settling into the new facility well. The Timbertop Integrated Children's Centre is still due for completion in May 2022, and those enrolled have commenced the year at the Ricks Road Centre and will transition to Timbertop once it is ready to open. The feedback I've received from those families are they're happy and the children have settled in well to their kinder group. So that's great news. I'll now go to the seconder to highlight items from this report in their ward. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Bradford. Look, I'd just like to note for Council that Councillor Davies had to leave the meeting unexpectedly, so I hope all is okay for Councillor Davies. But moving along, I will go to the seconder, Councillor Ross, to speak to this item.
Thank you, Mayor. One of the highlights in this report is the fact that IYU Reserve Athletics Track is at the moment anyone who drives down that road there near the soccer IYU soccer field will see it's in full swing. There's dirt, there's excavation equipment and the whole lot of it. This will be a 10-lane synthetic track, and I must say it has a really, really long history of even in some previous councils. They tried to not even have IYU Reserve put up as one of the projects, but I'm really, really proud that it's still there. The construction commenced on January 2022, and anticipated completion will be October 2022, October. So we expect to open it in early 2023. I think this will be a wonderful addition to our sporting establishments in Cardinia Shire, as at the moment, if you try to find a synthetic athletics track of any decent size, all the schools have to move outside. Our athletics club have got a track that is prone, well, it's grass, so it's prone to being underwater. And basically, this will be an absolutely wonderful addition for them. They've waited so long for it, and I just can see people being a destination in Western Gippsland to come and try our athletics track, including schools. Anyway, this is a wonderful thing. I'll leave some space for other people to share what's happening in their ward. Thank you, Mayor.
Thank you, Councillor Ross. I'll go to Councillor Ryan next to speak to this item.
Thank you, Mayor, through you, and thank you to the other councillors. It's always great to report on each ward and what's happening, because I think that's what our community needs to hear, all the wonderful things the projects that are happening. In Henty Ward, the Pakenham Regional Tennis Centre Pavilion Extension, the project was proposed for the Pakenham Tennis Club in relocation, comprising of a steel frame construction, full height glazing kitchen, unisex toilet, balcony that overlooks the courts, and a provision for a 2-person lift, which is great for some people in wheelchairs or any other aids that they need, walking sticks or four-wheelie frames, anything like that. The project is fully funded by the council. The timelines, the project scheduled for completion in late December 2022. The principal contractor has ceased trading and council is managing completing the works. The other one that's really exciting is My Place Youth Facility, but it's called Youth Hub. So we need to change the name when we talk about it now. Relocation and expansion of My Place Youth Facility. It's a parcel of council-owned land in James Street, Pakenham. The new facility will accommodate approximately 1,000 square metres of building structure, together with landscaping and associated car parking, which will be designed to engage and support young people from the age of 12 to 25 years. The funding, this project is jointly funded by Council, the Victorian Government Growing Suburbs Fund and the Australian Government. The project is scheduled to completion in December 2022. The construction contractor has been successfully awarded and construction has commenced on site. The Multicultural Hub feasible study undertaken. The feasible study including community and key stakeholders consultation that will outline purpose for the hub, range of community activities and services to be offered at the hub, potential location sites, service model, design feature that should be included, case studies on similar hubs include this learning, and the concept design included in the cost. The study is jointly funded by Council and the Australian Government. The feasible study is completed. The feasible study was tabled in December 2021 Council meeting with the following recommendations. That Council notes the multicultural feasible hub report that the funding would be required from other levels of government to build the hub. Advocates to other levels of government for funding to build the hub and refers to this project for Council 2022 to 2023 Capital Works budget for consideration. Thanks to Cardinia Shire Multicultural Community Called Network Agencies and Access Inclusion Committee for their feedback and contribution to the feasibility assessment. Advocacy documentation has been completed. And that's all I've got to report on major projects. The Mayor, thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Ryan. Moving along, councillors. Councillor Moore up next. Thank you.
Thank you, Mayor Springfield. Yeah, that was a good big report there, Councillor Ryan. I just wanted to just say that there's a lot of roads being resealed or re-bitumised within our shire at the moment, which is really pleasing to see. Even the road called Bessie Creek Road, which is a very long road in Bunyip Ward, being resealed and the white lines and everything else put down, so it's like a new super highway, which is a fantastic. They did a really fantastic job, the contractors down there. But I'd like to just make a comment about one of our new staff members, who's David Feist, who's done a lot of work in this major projects area, and it's really great to have him on board. And I just wanted to thank him for his hard work and his input into this major projects area. That's all. Thank you, Mayor.
Thank you, Councillor Moore. Would any other councillors like to speak to this item? Councillor Owen.
Yeah, just briefly, Mayor. Thank you. I just want to make mention to Sealing the Hills. There's a number of roads in Beacon Hills Ward that are at various stages of construction, design, etc. Can I encourage residents to continue to check the website, check this report on a monthly basis to get an update regarding that roads program. You know, I get a lot of questions, regarding the status of, a road project that's going to be sealed. Can I encourage residents to check the website? They are at various different stages. There's a lot of thorough design being undertaken, and unfortunately it does take time, and there's consultations with other groups, the question groups, etc., etc. So can I encourage residents to check the website? But it's great to see the update of many of the roads in Beacon Hills Ward and the hills. So thank you, Mayor.
Thank you, Councillor Owen. Councillor Cameron, I'll go to you next for a comment.
Thank you, Mayor. I'd just like to reiterate what Councillor Owen said about the sealing of the roads. Mount Lyell Road at Heath Hill at the moment has got a road counter, a traffic counter on it in preparation for the sealing of that road. And McGregor, Soldiers and Hobson's roads, the contract has been awarded for those roads, and the works are programmed to begin in March over a 20-week period. So that'll be a great thing for Pakenham South, Officer South, and just the completion of the Kuirup Football Club club rooms and the building for the school. That they've been completed and are in use at the moment. The school pavilion is to have an opening, but yeah, that was put off for COVID. So at some stage that'll come back onto the agenda. Yeah, so that's about all in Western Port Ward. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Cameron. Would any other councillors like to speak to this item? Councillor Kowalczyk.
Thank you, Mayor Springfield. And I don't know if it qualifies as a major project, but at the end there, I saw some playground renewal stuff and been asked a lot of questions around what's happening with the Windermere Boulevard playground, particularly from parents of young children, of which I am one of those members of the community. So essentially what happened there was we secured some funding to expand the park, and those works were about to take place just before they started. The existing playground structure was vandalised to a point of disrepair, and so that has to subsequently be removed as well. So I have been getting a lot of questions about it. So from my conversations with council officers and in turn their conversations with the contractors, the way this is going to play out is the existing playground structure will be removed, the planned works will proceed as they originally had planned to do, and the park will then open. And then council will work through the insurance process of getting that new playground that was vandalised up and running, but that could take some time. So that it will be reinstated to as close as we can, physically get as what the original playground was, but it will take some time. So there's a lot of work happening on the Windermere Boulevard playground at the moment. The upgrade will be going ahead, but the existing playground structure will probably take some time as council works through the insurance process. So if you do have any further questions, you can get in contact with me or please get in contact with council. Thank you, Mayor.
Thank you, Councillor Kowalczyk. Would any other councillors like to speak to this item? I think we've pretty much covered everyone, so I'll go back to Councillor Bradford to summarise. Thank you.
Thank you, Mayor, and thank you all councillors for your comments and highlighting all the great stuff that is happening across the Shire. I think it is really important to highlight this major projects report from time to time and celebrate the commitment council has to improving infrastructure across our Shire. So I am seeking support from my fellow councillors to note this report tonight. Thank you.
Thank you for your summary, Councillor Bradford. And councillors, will now put this to a vote. All those in favour, please raise your hand. I declare that carried. Thank you, councillors. That concludes discussion of the items withdrawn. Are there any matters listed in the agenda that anyone would also wish to debate upon? There being Councillor Ryan. Which item would you like to discuss?
Yes, I just wanted to bring up Councillor's report on some of the activities that I was involved in since over the last month. Residents always like to hear from all councillors in all wards as to some of the reports that they've been involved in, and so I suppose this is the time to report it. Is that right, Mayor?
I think no.
Or we leave it till later.
No. Councillor reports comes next. This is where this is the consent agenda where we pass a motion to withdraw, pass all the items that haven't been withdrawn. This is an opportunity for any items listed on the agenda that haven't been withdrawn that if anyone has chosen that they'd like to withdraw at the last minute to discuss that particular item. That's what we're alluding to at this point in time. So
I'm jumping the gun there.
You are jumping the gun there. So what we'll do is we'll hold off on that. That'll be coming up very next in the next up. But just to reiterate, if there's no one else wishes to withdraw and discuss any of the items that haven't been listed for withdrawal previously on the agenda, and I can see no other hands raising, then can I please have a mover to adopt the officer's recommendations for the remaining items that haven't been withdrawn to date? Councillor Moore, thank you. And a seconder, please. Councillor Bradford, thank you. All councillors in favour, please raise your hand. I declare that item carried. Thank you, councillors. That concludes all the items on the agenda for decisions tonight. So moving forward to councillors' report is the next items on the agenda, and we will go straight off to Councillor Ryan as the first cab at the rank to discuss councillor reports of what she's been involved in if she would like to. So Councillor Ryan, here's your opportunity. Thank you.
Thank you, Mayor. So I'll make sure in future I don't jump the gun. Okay, some of the things that have happened over the last month that I have attended to. The Cardinia Youth Hub, the new Cardinia Youth Hub it's called, My Place facility on the 27th of January. Some of my fellow councillors and MP Jason Wood and Jordan Cronali were in attendance there, plus officers as well. The programs for our youth, again at the age of 12 to 24 years, My Place in the main street of Pakenham is breaking at the seams. So the new hub is going to be in James Street in Pakenham, and we've already started the project. There was a bit of sand or soil digging, but there wasn't much soil there to dig. It was very, very dry. So so that happened on the 27th. There were photos taken, so that'll be in the Connect magazine. I'm not sure if the other councillors saw the photograph of councillors jumping in the air and some of our MPs. I didn't think I could jump that high, so it was quite surprising, but a lot of fun. Attended, unfortunately, a passing of a fellow ex-councillor at Casey Council, Amanda Stapleton. Very, very active councillor, and did a lot of work for disabilities, and we often had conversations about mental health and what we could do for between both councils, and she'll be sadly missed, and our condolences go out to the family. On the 12th of February, I attended an AGM at the Lily Pond House for the new committee members, and so they're all looking forward to getting up there and getting into action and with their calisthenics and get moving and get healthy and exercise. So that's about it, because we're still being limited in what we can do. So I hope I look forward to hearing some of the other councillors' activities and what they've been involved in. Thank you, Mayor.
Thank you, Councillor Ryan. Would any other councillors would like to have any reports to bring forward? Councillor Radford.
Thank you, Mayor. Yes, I'd just like to thank everyone who has invited us to attend things that have been online and AGMs and all those sorts of things, because it's really good for us councillors to get out there and get in touch with the residents, and I love attending. But I just wanted to highlight one thing from this month, which was I attended the United African Farm launch on Saturday, the 12th of February. It's located on Fowler Road in Officer, and it was such a joyous celebration. The farm is a fantastic community initiative aimed to unify, reconnect, empower and strengthen the African community and wider Cardinia Shire community through farming, culture, food and a sense of belonging. The event was well attended, including a number of council officers, Jordan Cronali and Jason Wood, and it was so satisfying at the end of the event to pick some produce straight out of the ground, take it home and then eat it for dinner that night. So I congratulate on the founders for starting up this community initiative. I'm really looking forward to watching it grow, and I sincerely thank them for the invitation to join in this celebration. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Bradford. Would any other councillors have reports they'd like to present? Councillor Owen, just in the nick of time.
Thanks, Mayor, and thank you, councillors. I just also want to follow on from Councillor Ryan's comments about past councillor Amanda Stapleton. I attended a funeral with Councillor Moore as well, and it was a very sad event. But I just want to acknowledge her passing, her work in her community, and our thoughts are with her family at this time as well. Also, the passing of Ruth Crofts, who was involved in National Trust locally around Berwick. I've worked with her on a number of different matters before Cardinia Shire Council over the years. So we acknowledge the passing of Ruth Cross as well. And I want to acknowledge the retirement of Casey Cardinia librarian Heather Arnold. Heather Arnold, who runs the local history group, Casey Cardinia, history group, which comes out of the library. But Heather's an amazing person, and we acknowledge her retirement and thank her for her blogs, the history blog that she ran, and the many articles that she's published, whether it's in the local papers or what. So thank you, Heather. I know she's a local to Cardinia, so I just wanted to thank her for her efforts. And definitely I want to acknowledge the Beaconsfield Australia Day movie. I know Australia Day was very different this year, obviously because of COVID, but thank you to the BPA who still ran that event. It was a drive-in movie because of COVID, but thank you for that committee for holding that event. Thank you, Mayor.
Thank you, Councillor Owen. I'll go to Councillor Ross next.
Thank you, Mayor. If I can just piggyback on my other councillors, I'll just read out a post that I put up about Councillor Amanda Stapleton. With great sadness, yesterday I attended with many hundreds of people the funeral of Amanda at the Berwick Church of Christ. Amanda had a special glow that always made others feel important and special. She always put others first and would always give 100% in attention to any tasks she put her mind to. She would always think others first before herself and was very trusting of others because of her own faith in the good of others. I will miss her great smile and friendly greetings. I listened to others share of their experiences with Amanda, and I am not alone in my observations. The world will be a poorer place without her, and I am grateful to have known her and share some time with her. May she rest in the comfort of our Maker, and we look forward to meeting her again one day. Thank you, Amanda.
Thank you, Councillor Ross, and well said. Councillor Moore.
Thank you, Ms. Springfield, and thank you, Councillor Ross. It was beautifully said, and I know I did go to the funeral with Councillor Owen. It was because Amanda was someone very special to me. Particularly, we shared being mayors together, as Councillor Owen understands, and she was a fantastic community worker. It's the whole story is a sad story to think about. But anyway, it was a beautiful tribute on the day. Even her son Peter made a tribute on screen, which was really just fantastic to see. It was heartbreaking, really. But anyway, we will sadly miss her. But I hope I'm not crossing over on Councillor Cameron's information here. But we both went to the Cooey Up Australia Day celebration, which they put on. And I'm sorry, Councillor Cameron, if you were going to do this, but it was a really great day, and it was great to see at least Cockatoo and Cooey Up doing Australia Day celebration in particular, and it was really good to see all the school children getting some awards from the Cooey Up area, and I know Councillor Cameron was involved in the presentation of the awards, and it was great to see all the community together out at Cooey Up. So it was an honour to be involved in it. So that's all I've got. Yeah, thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Moore. Would any other councillors like to have any matters they'd like to report on? I see no other hands, so I will move along. And next item on the agenda is presentation of petitions. Councillor Moore, I understand that you have a petition you wish to table. Would you like to present that to us? Thank you.
Have I? You? If I have, I'm sorry, Mr. Mayor. I don't know what I've misplaced it if that's the case.
May I chime in, Mr. Mayor?
I think can we ask Mr. Evans? Is Mr. Evans in the building?
Yes, yes.
Mr. Evans is in the building.
I think this petition might relate to the agenda item we were earlier in the day. Is that correct, Mr. Evans?
This was in regard to the concerns being expressed by the Garfield Progress Association, Councillor Moore.
Oh, was it? Oh.
We'll handle that as we would normally.
Oh, sorry. Yes, yes. About the strategy. Is that about the Garfield strategy?
They're requesting that the Garfield strategy be revisited.
Yes, I thought I'd mentioned it earlier on in the report that I did about the I mentioned that it hasn't been in since 2002. Yes, I will table it. Sorry, Mayor, and I'm sorry, Mr. Evans. That was remiss of me not to have that important request placed table tonight. But I'm tabling it tonight. Thank you, Mr. Mayor.
Great. Okay. Thank you, Councillor Moore. This petition will lay on the table for consideration at the next council meeting in March. And are there any other petitions, councillors? Thank you, councillors. Next along, notices of motion. Now, Councillor Ross, you have a notice of motion that you wish to move. Councillor Ross, you can please move your motion.
Thank you, Mayor. I move that Council invites the relevant ward councillors to attend and participate in any announcements made by state and federal MPs, ministers or MPs, and that Council organised events and openings that pertain to his or her ward where it is practicable to do so. And dot point number 2, the invitation be extended as early as possible to enable attendance. Thank you, Mayor.
Thank you, Councillor Ross. Can I have a seconder, please? And I note that Councillor Ryan has raised their hand to second that. So I'll go to the mover, Councillor Ross, to speak to this item first. Thank you.
Thank you, Mayor. Look, this comes about because we've gone from being a multi-ward council to a single ward council. And what often used to happen on council was if you had multi-wards and some people would be invited to certain things and others wouldn't be invited to things, and then there'd be a discussion about why did I get invited and why didn't I get invited if you're all councillors in the same ward. Being a single member ward, we don't have that issue anymore. So you have one councillor to a ward, you have a mayor, and then you have a deputy mayor. This just makes a really clear distinction right across the organisation that everybody has an understanding that if they hear about any announcements or invites or whatever, that they need to where is practicable to do so, let the ward councillor in that area know about those things as soon as possible. Admittedly, there's times when people don't get invited to things and we understand that. Admittedly, there's times when we don't have time to contact people and that's understandable too. But it's just a different way of looking at things in a single member world. That councillor should be, contacted and let know. I know our PAs will certainly appreciate the fact that the whole organisation will come and let them know about different things, because they are the best way to contact us, rather than all the tentacles out there sort of not realising they're busy doing whatever. But if they contact our two PAs, Jenny and Elise, I'm sure they will let us know as soon as possible. Anyway, I just think it's a different way of thinking. It just puts it in order in a single member ward area. And I just think it's a really good, easy way for the whole organisation to understand what you need to do in this space as far as practical. Anyway, I hope my fellow councillors support this. And I thank them for their injection of ideas in this space. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Ross. I'll go to Councillor Ryan, the seconder, to speak next.
Thank you, through you, Mayor. Thank you, Councillor Ross, for bringing these up. There's often been discussions over how things were going to change when wards became single councillor wards. It's an opportunity for residents to acknowledge the ward councillors and recognise them, so that if they've got concerns or questions, they've got a face to the name, and that way they're able to approach that person during whether on that day, or it gives the ward councillor opportunities to give their card out as well to encourage residents to talk to them in reference to the ward. It's not always practical, we know that, but if it's possible, and that way we cover all areas as councillors within and around each other's wards. But also it's single wards has changed so much, and we have so much more extra work now that we have to do. And now that we will be going back out on the on site and on the ground, as they say, fairly soon, we're going to be a lot more busier. Besides our meetings and our other commitments, there'll be lots of functions coming up for us to attend to, and our residents always expect that. And it's also a way of showing the difference between a federal minister, a state minister, and a local government councillor. That way, often I've seen and heard that residents get very confused about what the difference is. So it gives the opportunity as to, well, this is what they do, this is what state does, and then this is where we come in the last end of it. So, you know, it's just that, as Councillor Ross said, it's a different way of looking at things, but it's also a new way that we will be able to cover all the commitments that we have during our term. So I will be in support of this motion. Thank you, Mayor.
Thank you, Councillor Ryan. Would any other councillors like to speak to this item? Councillor Kowalczyk.
Thank you, Mayor Springfield, and I'll be brief. Thank you, Councillor Ross and Councillor Ryan. In principle, I support this notice of motion and the intent behind it. Generally speaking, most councillors are invited to openings and announcements, but I do think if this notice of motion can improve or formally lay out the protocol, then I don't think it's a bad thing. So I'll be supporting this notice of motion tonight. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Kowalczyk. Councillor Moore.
I'll also be supporting this notice of motion from Councillor Ross. I think it's a good thing. You've got to understand that since being elected, we haven't had a year like years like this, 2.5 years. We've been in a pandemic, so it's been unusual, these circumstances, because of we would have been out and about doing a lot more things that we've under usual circumstances. So it is unusual, and so I do believe that. Formally, something put in place formally, as Councillor Ross is alluding to, I think is not a bad thing, and just reinforcing the who we are and where we're supposed to be. So I support Councillor Ross on this. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Moore. Do I have any other councillors that would like to speak to this item? Councillor Cameron.
Thank you, Mayor. I will be supporting this notice of motion put up by Councillor Ross, and I agree with everything everybody else has said, and it just is a mark of respect to the councillor in the ward for first and foremost, and whilst being relatively new to the ward myself, there's nothing worse than going to a function and having a question asked of you in relation to something going on in the ward that you weren't invited to, and you have no idea what they're even talking about. So it is a mark of respect to each ward councillor, and I think it's a good thing. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Cameron. Would any other councillors like to speak to this item? Just a note before I go back to the mover to speak. I also will support this notice of motion. But just to note, it has been, this in my time and my observations, it has always been the practice of council and council officers to embody this, what we see presented before us. So I don't recall any instances that I've personally experienced where I feel like I have been not invited to an event or informed about something. So I think this is just solidifying through the mechanism of a notice of motion through a council meeting what we already have practiced in principle from my time on council, because I always have found it to be inclusive. So I just want to make this certain that aware that, in support of this, there's not recognition that there has been any fault of this happening on the behalf of officers in the past of feeling left out, because I've never felt that way in my time as council, just to highlight that notion. But I think it is an admirable fact, and we are in a single member ward situation now, as Councillor Ross has pointed out for us. So I think it is good to have this on the record moving forward, to note that this is the best practice that we can embody. Thank you, councillors. I'll now go back to Councillor Ross to summarise. Thank you.
Thank you, Mayor, and thank you, fellow councillors. As we've heard, we've all had slightly different experiences. I have no doubt that nobody deliberately went out of their way to do anything incorrect. I think it's just formalising right across the board that everyone in the organisation understands that that this is a process under single member wards, and as a mark of respect, as Councillor Cameron said, that we're informed and we're invited, and they'll just know that. And Jenny and Elise will I know very much appreciate, instead of councillors contacting them to say, can you go and find out, I've heard something about this. Hopefully the organisation will let them know, so they'll contact us and let us know as soon as possible. So we'll have some information around the space. We'll be invited and hopefully in a timely manner, which they'll do their best to do. Anyway, thank you, fellow councillors. I just think it formalises a really good work practice, and hopefully this will improve the situation on council, so that that's what we're all about, trying to make improvements all the time. So I hope my fellow councillors support this. Thank you, Mayor.
Thank you, Councillor Ross. And councillors, I will now put this to a vote. All those in favour, please raise your hand. I declare that item carried. Thank you. Moving along to community question time. We have received a question from Jessica Walton, and I will ask the CEO, Ms. Carol Jeffs, to read and answer the question. Ms. Jeffs, please.
Thank you, Mayor. The question from Ms. Walton reads, I have spent this week doing an access audit of businesses on Main Street, Pakenham, which I've been documenting on Twitter. I'll put together a report for council once I have completed the audit. The question is there specifically a plan to use the Growing Suburbs Fund to make these businesses accessible to wheelchair users? If so, how will they be made accessible? If we get the grant and council have 18 months to do the work, what will they do in the meantime to help wheelchair users access businesses on Main Street? Assuming it will be the outside that is made accessible, for example, replacing steps with ramps or raised pavement, how will council help businesses widen their doors, put in automatic doors that don't have to be pushed open with your feet if you're in a wheelchair, and make toilets and change rooms accessible? Thank you for your question, Ms. Walton. Council, as you know, Council is a strong advocate for disability access, and we aim to ensure that all council facilities have suitable access for all. Council's Disability Action Plan 2021 to 2026 was endorsed at the council meeting on Monday, the 13th of December, just recently. This plan sets out what we will do to make our community, workplaces, services, programs and venues more accessible to people with disability, so that they are equitable, inclusive and safe. Council is preparing the urban design framework for the Pakenham Town Centre, which includes Main Street. We expect the plan to be completed in the first quarter of 2022, so very soon, with community consultation to follow. The aim of this framework is to improve pedestrian movement and connections with the town centre, with improvements to footpath surfaces along Main Street to assist with accessibility for all. Most of the sites on Main Street, Pakenham, are privately owned. I think we're talking about the shops here. And building access requirements are driven by the Building Act and disability legislation. So we will be working with those private landowners. But the Growing Suburbs Fund that Council has received is for a holistic approach to the street upgrade. It will include consideration of improved accessibility, along with a number of other improvements in the public spaces. but will not be for the upgrade of privately owned properties. So although we will work with shop owners, we cannot spend that money on private property. In recent times, maintenance works were carried out to address issues with the tree roots cracking the footpath pavement and to address issues associated with a number of pram ramps. These works have been completed and maintenance issues rectified. Thank you for your question, Jessica, and we'll keep you and others informed as that project progresses. Thank you, Mayor.
The mayor's frozen.
Thank you.
I can hear
Next
something.
along, we have the councillor question time, and Councillor Davies had a question she would like to ask regarding actions council has taken to facilitate celebrate LGBTIQ plus diversity. Here myself, I'm in the room though. I think councillors, can you hear me?
Yes, we
Yes,
can hear
yeah.
you, but not see you at the moment. Oh, now you're back.
Okay. Sorry about that. We're right at the end of the meeting too, so I'll be really quick and hopefully we'll get through this. So, Councillor Davies had a question she would like to ask, but in her absence, I will ask Councillor Radford to present this question instead. And the question regarding actions council has taken to facilitate and celebrate LGBTIQ plus diversity. Councillor Radford, if you'd like to ask that question, please.
Thank you, Mayor. Yes, I will be reading a question to the CEO on behalf of Councillor Davies in her absence. The question is, would a council officer please provide information about actions council has taken to facilitate and celebrate LGBTIQ plus diversity in council and the community? Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Radford, and through you, Mayor, I'll answer the question. So council, of course, promotes social inclusion of the LGBTIQ plus community within council and within our community. I'll just give you some recent examples of where council have facilitated and celebrated inclusion, and these include the endorsement of council's social justice and equity policy. Council has an active internal action group with representatives across council that meets bi-monthly to share ideas, collaborate and promote the LGBTIQ plus community and raise awareness. We have included an inclusive statement in all recruitment advertising and included an LGBTIQ plus example in our staffing inductions to raise awareness and inclusion within our staff. Annually, we celebrate LGBTIQ plus events such as the Pride March, which was just held recently, and Ida Hobbit Day celebrations, and these happen subject to COVID-19 restrictions. The Cardinia Libraries Corporation includes inclusive literature. Our youth team actively supports our younger LGBTIQ plus community by offering a range of programs through our Youth Service Centre and work with our local secondary colleges to assist in establishing gay, straight alliance groups. These students also take the lead in arranging events at the school, such as an Ida Hobbit Day celebrations. Cardinia Shire Council is a member of the Rainbow Sports Alliance, which is made up of state sporting associations, local government authorities and peak bodies. We provide advocacy and support to LGBTIQ plus initiatives to encourage participation and access to our facilities, programming and engagement. And Cardinia Shire Council is one of 5 local government authorities delivering a park life with Proud to Play social sport participation program targeting our rainbow community. Cardinia is also a partner council with Proud to Play in delivering Rainbow Ready clubs in 2022. So thank you for your question, Councillor Radford. We are doing a lot in this space and we're really proud to participate in many of those activities I've mentioned.
Thank you, Ms. Jeffs. Councillors, that concludes tonight's meeting. So I thank you all for your attention and your interest. And I now declare the meeting closed. So thank you and have a good night.
Yeah.
Good night.